Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about recruitment, but not your typical recruitment. Jason Byrne, he is the founder and CEO of Icon IQ, based out of Calgary, Alberta, and they're doing some really cool stuff. But before we get into that, I just want to welcome you to the show, Jason. How are you doing?
Thanks, Lance. I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Really great. And thank you so much for taking the time today to join us and share your story. But before we get into the background of your business, tell me a little bit about your thoughts around what are three things that every entrepreneur needs to know.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important question for people, especially those who are, current entrepreneurs or maybe considering becoming an entrepreneur. And these can change a little bit depending on what I would share might change depending on my day. But I think the first to remember as an entrepreneur is that you're not alone. I mean, the challenges and the successes that you're going to face are shared across, the entrepreneur spectrum. And so that's important to remember. So having entrepreneurs that you can open up with, learn from, confide in is really important, having that network. The second thing related to the first is it can be really difficult. It can be hard. And again, you're not alone. So that network is important. And the last piece, and this is what I think you need to remember, and also I would say a key differentiator between a successful entrepreneur that you're going to read about and one that you don't, and that's you have to keep pushing. When you have when you think that you've reached the end and you're about to give up, don't, because right around the corner is the next big win, the next big success that is going to give you that inspiration and motivation to keep going.
Yeah, that's a really great point that you make there at the end there, because one of the things that always motivates me at times when those days are the darkest of days, right? And you're thinking like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Oftentimes, what continues to drive me forward is this, well, if I quit now, what would it have been like right, like, am I quitting too soon? Could it have been something bigger and stuff? And so there's always that fear of what it could be that keeps me kind of driving forward even more. And I don't know if that's common amongst entrepreneurs. I've never actually really talked to anybody about that. Where do you get your drive to get to push through those really difficult times?
Yeah, I think it's just working towards we as entrepreneurs, you need to have a vision. And that
Yeah.
vision isn't static. It's dynamic, and there might be small changes or big changes depending on what's going on, but you're always moving towards that vision. So for me, that's really providing that motivation, that inspiration to keep going, that I'm wanting to achieve this thing for myself, for my team, for my family, for the legacy of the company. And so those are the things that, when I'm having a difficult day for whatever reason, those are some of the things that I reflect on looking at that legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the other thing I would think for myself when I was just reflecting on it as you were talking is it's utter stubbornness actually on my part. I just won't give up. Like, I don't want to give up. That was one of the big motivators for me too, I think, getting through some of the difficult points. Now let's talk about your business though. So
Mhm.
Icon IQ has been around in a couple different forms for a number of years now. So tell us, what is it that you're doing over at Icon IQ, and maybe where did it all begin?
Yeah, so maybe I can start at the beginning. So Jobs Alberta emerged in 2015, focused on helping Alberta-based businesses solve labor shortage issues by accessing a global talent pool and using Canadian immigration programs to bring people in to help solve that. And so, the quick service restaurant is an example, hotels, um, construction workers, machinists, agricultural workers. These are all examples of the types of the people and programs that we were using pre-pandemic, I'll say, and that's an important consideration here as well. So that's what we were doing for the first really 4 years of our life as Jobs Alberta.
Hmm. And then from there, you guys evolved.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that kind of led to you and I speaking today, and just reflecting on resilience and transformation, and continuing to push. So, um, when business is going well, you probably don't closely examine your business as hard as you need to. And what I mean by that is where are, that traditional SWOT analysis is an example, looking for weaknesses or threats. And although the pandemic was a black swan event, obviously our business, which we're really relying on the mobility of people, effectively went to zero in a matter of a couple of months when COVID really ramped up in March of 2020. So we worked really hard to make all of our stakeholders, the companies who we were working with, as well as candidates on the other side, whole. That was important for us because our integrity really matters and it's one of our values. But again, during this period of time, we really had to think hard about what is the future of our business going to look like? Do we want to keep going? We have to pause what we're doing, absolutely. But do we want to keep going down the same path? Do we want to scrap the business altogether? Or is there some sort of detour in between that can really leverage and harness what we know how to do and what we're good at? So we going through this, and I think this is also valuable for entrepreneurs to hear. We had a couple of false starts. What we're doing now with Icon IQ was not our first idea or second idea during the pandemic with our relaunch. But it was something that had always lived in the back of my head as a great opportunity. And so maybe I'll share what that opportunity is and what we do now. So Icon IQ is a recruiting company that specializes in sourcing senior technical talent. So think a developer, an engineer, a data scientist, a product manager from Latin America for Alberta-based businesses. So in the same way that we were identifying working with Alberta-based businesses or Canadian-based companies and helping them solve their talent issues, we really migrated what we knew how to do in a very specialized area, working exclusively with companies who require senior tech talent. And how we got there, and this is, I think, for a lot of burgeoning entrepreneurs or founders, figuring out what you have an interest in, a passion about, maybe what you want to pursue. We took a look at where what labor trends really stood out for us in the province specifically, so Calgary and Edmonton. And tech was one that just kept hitting us in the face. There's an opportunity in technology. Technology companies are starving for good talent. So we went out and we had a number of great conversations with all sizes of tech companies, even companies who hadn't even launched a business yet, to large enterprises. What are the common challenges you face in being able to recruit and hire great people? And it was a consistent theme. So we thought, okay, when you can't find what you need locally, where do you go? You broaden the search, you go national, then you go international. And even the feedback in that is, there are time zone, if it's a remote candidate, time zones can be a challenge. English language can be a challenge. Educational credentials, experience, proficiency can be a challenge. So we wanted to really find a way that could address all of those issues. And where we landed was Latin America is a very, very talent-rich region, especially Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia, and a couple of others. And so we thought, let's launch a recruiting business around doing that. And so we have a recruiting team now in Mexico that specializes in their Latin American knowledge of the tech talent, the unicorns that may exist in Latin America, the educational institutions that matter. And one more piece about Latin America is that Guadalajara, Monterrey, Mexico City, other countries in Latin America have very established tech ecosystems. Again, just contributing to that very, very rich talent pool. So anyway, sorry, Lance, to wrap this up. That's where we went, and we went deep. We decided this is where we're going. There's a need for it, and relaunched our business really about 18 months ago with that new strategy under our legacy brand, Jobs Alberta.
Yeah. And so if I'm hearing it right, you started the business back in 2015, right, as Jobs Alberta, and you were really just focused on bringing in workers who are going to be working maybe the more manual labor almost type jobs, not a lot of higher education required jobs. And then the pandemic hit, the borders get closed. You can't bring those people in anymore, even though there's probably still demand here, but it's just isn't going to work. And so then you need to find a different way to keep the doors open and to serve businesses. And so then you started to look at the opportunities that were there, the trends. Tech is a hotbed of activity, and it's not confined to the physicalness of the other industries that you were doing. And so you were able then to remote these workers in, and Latin America was where you were really targeting and developing that network of highly skilled technical workers. And now you're serving the tech industry exclusively. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And so what's been great though is we're now seeing those remote arrangements that we had established during the pandemic. Those people are now migrating and immigrating into Alberta to become
Uh,
co-located shoulder to shoulder with those tech companies. And that's really powerful for a couple of reasons. I mean,
mm,
you're changing lives in Mexico. We can just talk maybe they're going through some difficult challenges right now with the cartels and the government. So safety is a common concern for a lot of Latin Americans. And so the opportunity to relocate to a country like Canada, a city like Edmonton or Calgary, is life changing. So that's really, really powerful. The second is on the broader ecosystem where we're able to help grow the talent pool and really work at a more permanent fix and the sustainability of the tech sector growth in the province.
mm. Yeah, and I think that obviously you're serving a critical segment of the market that has just been really struggling, like you said, to get that talent. And so it's really interesting, the evolution. And so would you say that where you're at today is a better business model than what it was pre-pandemic?
I would say I would say yes, it's a better model. I think that in being, having the ability to have a remote worker, solve some of those cross-border issues, absolutely. I think one of my learnings around transforming our business the way we have is specialization. Specialization has really served us well, where we have gone incredibly deep very narrowly doing something. And that has helped us become, really grow our expertise and be known for this. So I would say that's one of the important learnings for me is that, and you hear about this in business, obviously, but that has been, I would say this is my testimonial for us that specialization has led to us being more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see that because before you were dealing with so many different industries, right? And
Mhm.
so sure, the market might have been bigger, but in terms of just the breadth of it,
Mhm.
but in terms of the number of workers and then probably also because you're dealing with more skilled workers, your rates are probably a little bit different. I would think that there's a little bit more of a premium per engagement that you have now than
Mhm.
what it was before. And so it's kind of maybe being smarter with the resources that you have too, and extracting a greater profitability for the effort that you're putting into that recruitment process, right?
Yeah, I think that all of that is definitely true. And there's personally, I mean, there's something exciting about, and not to say that these other industries aren't exciting and there are, incredible business owners and people, but there's something new and, exciting about technology. And it's a nascent
Yeah.
industry in Alberta, really. I mean, there are, very established tech companies, of course, but it's got a lot of momentum now, and this momentum is newer. So we're really we're riding that wave of enthusiasm. And so again, back to an earlier comment about legacy, I'll look back when I retire and I'll reflect on, wow, we worked with so many startups who have been able to exit for 300 million, $3 billion, whatever it is, and have been part, we have helped them succeed by finding them great people.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool, right? To have that as part of your legacy, the ability to help those organizations achieve the success that they're destined to have. But I
Hmm.
mean, if you don't have the people, it's pretty tough, and it's so driven by that in this space where it's so hyper competitive, right? I mean, uh,
Hmm.
us Edmonton companies are competing against, or Alberta-based companies are competing against Silicon Valley and Texas and then other places globally as well, right? The tech talent is such a global,
Hmm.
I was going to say commodity. Commodity isn't quite the right word because that does make it sound a little, it cheapens it a little bit, but it's really such a high demand sector of knowledge, right?
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a portability with the talent where, working remote from anywhere. And that works both ways. As much as we're talking about, helping an Edmonton-based company find a great full stack developer in Colombia, it goes the other way. There are a number of very qualified and capable people in Edmonton who are serving European tech companies, American tech companies from,
Yeah.
the comfort of their condo on 104th. So it really goes both ways. And so, I mean, I think that, and I might even suggest that some companies in Alberta, they're lagging a little bit with that awareness. And I mean,
Mm.
they need to really view their talent pool as global if they want to be competitive. And again, the desirability of relocating to Alberta and Canada is so strong. So it's not just a remote arrangement forever. It can be a relocation into Edmonton or elsewhere in Canada right away.
Yeah, and that is an interesting thing where I think it's difficult sometimes for us to wrap our head around anybody who would want to, especially at this time of year, we're recording this in January, anybody who would want to immigrate from a warm country into Canada. But it is the safety concerns for sure, and the opportunity for a better life for those families, right? And so it is definitely an appealing place to attract people for certain particular reasons. And so. But anyway, instead of getting into that, I'd love to just talk a little bit about the rebrand that you did as well. So you pivoted the business because of
Hmm.
the situation with the pandemic, which disrupted your model. And then during that pivot, you decided to change the name of the company as well.
Hmm.
Walk me through that decision, and what made you decide, yeah, really like why that was necessary through this pivot.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky in that the demand, the market was so hungry for a solution like ours that out of the gate we had early success, and so that was fantastic for us to experience, and that that product market fit. We had gotten close to what we thought the market wanted, and they were buying it, which was very gratifying. But we were challenged with scaling it. And we were challenged with scaling it because Jobs Alberta is a great brand, but it didn't represent who we became and what we were doing. So there was a disconnect between Jobs Alberta and us being a tech recruiter sourcing talent from Latin America and relocating them to Canada. So we realized that became a challenge, especially when we were trying to market, even for Alberta-based businesses, it was a challenge, but it became very difficult to market to prospective customers outside of the province
Yeah,
because they would see Jobs Alberta and not understand any relevance to them.
yeah,
So we began seeing these roadblocks early on and started, running through a list of, should we rebrand? Should we not rebrand? If we are, how are we going to do that? What is that going to look like? And we also ultimately made the decision to rebrand. And that in itself, I mean, the name iteration, and I chuckle looking back on this story, but my business partner would text me almost every day with a new suggestion. And
yeah,
he sent me, I'm going to say, 30 suggestions. And the 31st suggestion, I said yes. And that is Icon IQ. I didn't sometimes, and this might be, back to the first question on three recommendations. I mean, there's a lot of science and research that goes into business, but sometimes there's a gut feeling too. And,
yeah,
if you don't have the science to support it, or you're struggling to make a decision, rely on your gut, because that instinct is going to serve you not only in identifying a new business name, but in very critical decisions that you have to make for your business throughout its life.
yeah.
So we decided on Icon IQ, and then we, was really going through identifying, what we were looking for in a marketing agency to help us with that rebrand. And so it's the name, and they took us through a naming exercise as well, even though my heart was set on Icon IQ, and you would have to rip that from my cold dead fingers. Nothing could dissuade me from Icon IQ, which is again stubbornness and maybe the trait of an entrepreneur. But so we went through that, the brand exercise on the language, the colors, the logo. What tone do we have as a brand? So working through that entire exercise, and and Lance, you know this better than me, but it needs to be really collaborative. It
Yeah.
needs to be yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that the whole company has to be involved with, or at least very much the senior suite completely. And yeah, it's difficult. Naming a company is difficult. Rebranding a company can be even more difficult at times because you have all those legacy ideas and legacy emotions that are tied to what was, right? And so it can be tricky navigating through that. And so you guys engaged a company to help you do that, and you landed on Econ IQ. And so when it comes to the process that you went through, what do
Mhm.
you feel was the most challenging part about that, besides like landing on the actual name, but in terms of that whole process? Because I know there's a lot of people who are probably listening to this going, yeah, I've thought about rebranding as well, but it just seems like such a burden or something that I just don't want to take on at this point. So tell us a little bit about the challenges and how you overcome those in the process.
Yeah, I think that first, the realization that our brand, our legacy brand, every day that we didn't change our name, it was costing us money. It was
Yeah.
literally costing us money. So we recognized that we needed to make a change, and rebranding is a significant investment, financial, time, your energy. So it's a big undertaking, but for us, it was an absolute necessity, and it was absolutely the right thing to do looking back.
Yeah.
So some of the most challenging aspects about it, or maybe a learning along the way was, you have sometimes entrepreneurs can be perfectionists around certain things, and I think that that's a good trait. But it reaches a point where it's probably good enough. The average person that you've worked really hard and you've provided. You're on V10 of your logo with the marketing agency, and they're just pulling their hair out. Like it's not any different. No one's going to notice. So I think that at some point you just have to move on with things like that. Just say, hey, this is going to be good enough, and you can change it. Time is always against you, especially if you have a business that's a going concern. So the longer for us that we weren't rebranding, launching our new brand, it was costing us money. So we needed to then, I learned that I needed to make decisions faster and trust the expertise of the marketing agency.
Hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate that coming from the other side, being the marketing agency that is helping businesses with this, because that can be a difficult thing for us on this side of the table for sure. And we know how important it is for businesses. You have to get this right. So there's a lot of pressure on us as well. But at the same time, yeah, like we're the experts in this. This is what you're paying us to do, and so there definitely needs to be that trust. And so I'm glad to hear that whoever you were working with was able to earn that trust early on so that it did simplify the process a little bit better for you guys and at least get to an end point where you weren't creating too much friction along the way that was really slowing that process down, because that's the other thing that can be really painful for an organization
Mm-hmm.
is the length of time that it can sometimes take, right? It can really draw out, and you kind of almost have to put a lot of the business and marketing oriented things on hold while you're doing that, because it's like, well, why are we creating more assets in the old brand, and until we've got the new brand done, we just need to just focus our energy on that. And so it can kind of stagnate the business almost a little bit too.
I think I refer to it as rebranding purgatory,
Yeah.
where you're exactly right. Where we weren't prepared, we turn off Google ads. We turned off a lot of our advertising because we knew that, okay, like
Yeah.
why are we perpetuating this brand that we know is collapsing in 3 or 4 months? So that made it really, and the reinvestment in, the marketing collateral that we were using. So it's very difficult because not, and again, it just speaks to the opportunity cost of, okay, so there's the financial investment, there's your time, your team's time, and being collaborative. I think that was actually very, very important, bringing them on board. Who are we? What are our values? Let's revisit that. Do these colors, do we believe that they represent what we're doing, who we are? But
Yeah.
there are, so that opportunity cost of really kind of holding back on investing on your old brand is definitely relevant.
Yeah, yeah, completely. So now you have spent 2022 really doing a lot of shifting with regard to the business model itself and really refining this direction that you were taking in terms of specializing in the tech sector. And then obviously through the rebrand and repositioning the company. What I guess do you feel, looking back on that, was the, I guess, most critical element to your future success? So, and how are you going to leverage that now or propel the business forward? What's the plan now to take that investment and really now grow? Because I'd imagine through that process, again, that purgatory that you're talking about and everything else, it's just you're investing a lot as opposed to reaping the rewards. This is the year to reap those rewards. So, how are you going to do that best?
Yeah, and I think that this is important for entrepreneurs as well. So last year was a year of investment, a year of rebuilding, a year of being strategic. And I think that, because of that, we didn't necessarily have as many, those short-term financial wins that you can really rally around as a team. And as much as it's important to the business to operate, your team members, and for us in recruiting, when you're able to place that candidate, that's something that you celebrate. And when the goal is to do more of those. And when you're lagging behind your targets, that can be difficult on the team. But I think at the same time, I needed to reflect, and I really shared this with the team and had encouraged them to reflect this way as well. Like, we did amazing work last year. Like, what we accomplished as a company internally is incredible. Look at the evolution over the last 12 months. Look at what you've achieved. Look at what we've been able to do.
Yep.
So 2022 was a rebuilding year, and we're ready for that tornado. We've got a really solid foundation. And so we're now going to leverage all of the great things that we were doing last year, all of that hard work. And we needed to do those things. And now for our marketing, our business development, our advertising, our sales process for, onboarding, our search process for finding candidates, all of these aspects we have really dialed in now. So we're excited about 2023. We've got all the tools, we've got the right people. So we're excited for, and we're expecting a really strong year.
So now just getting really real here
Yeah.
with us for a moment, because when I think back to where you're saying, okay, so the pandemic really just shut down our business, and then
Hmm.
we had to do some iterations. Since then, we've landed here now, but it's been a journey, and then like last year being quite the rebuild year, and so it's been I'm guessing a few years of pretty lean revenues and yet lots of investment. As an
Hmm.
entrepreneur, how are you managing through that? Like, how are you keeping the lights on? How do you, really hold on to that business and the vision that you had through those periods of time where, things are, there's money going out the door and maybe not as much as
Hmm.
what you'd like coming in the other side.
Yeah, and this is one of those kind of isolating, isolating experiences.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky in that I have a fantastic business partner, and so he's there for me, and he's a business partner, but he's not operationally involved in the business. So he's there as an advisor, as a counselor, as an investor. So I'm lucky in that I have him. So not everyone has a business partner, but he's been central to us moving forward.
Yeah.
The second thing is going to be, for me, my spouse, my wife is, she works. And so we have a bit of a buffer built in to, okay, we can work through some lean times,
Yeah.
and she's very supportive of it. So I think having a supportive partner and
Huge.
be open with them. If you're not open with them, because it's stressful, and
Yeah.
you're probably, when you get home, you're burned out, you're not at your best. And if you're not open with them, it might be very challenging in your relationship. So be open, transparent, have a supportive spouse. I'm lucky I do. Um,
Yeah.
the third piece is, your ego, I think. And for me,
Mm,
so it's being comfortable with the fact that, and I say this to myself that, I get paid last. If,
yeah.
we have our team, they're working hard and they're an employee, they need to be compensated for what they're doing. As an owner, I take the risk. And then on the other side, then there's that reward at the end. So, I think for my ego, it's okay. You know what? Yeah. Like, the allure and the of being a successful entrepreneur, but behind the scenes, yeah, very, very lean times. And those, I think you have to be prepared for them. I'm going to say emotionally, but financially as well. So for anyone thinking of starting a business, do you have, the financial runway to support the growth of your business, but also provide for your own life and your families if you have one?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so difficult. I mean, regardless of whether you're in a situation like what you were found yourself in, where the business really, gets shut down because of the pandemic or some other event that happens. So it's a real slowdown in the business, or what we experienced through COVID, the initial part of COVID really shut us down as well. And then, 3, 4 months in, then things really started to pick up. And then we've grown actually lots through that time. And it's been the growth actually that has been the most problematic thing for us from a profitability standpoint. And so we have lots of revenue coming in the door, with lots of new business coming in the door, but the team to support that has to
Mm-hmm.
grow because we're in the service space, right? So it's all about the people. That's our capacity. And similar to what it will be with you as well. And so that has actually been the thing that's been really stressing me out and has created, like, 2022 was an extremely lean year from a profitability standpoint, one of my leanest years to date, even though we've had the greatest success that we've ever had. We've grown the most that we've ever had. And so it is such a tricky thing. So it doesn't really matter in a way what stage you're at. It's about really trying to be thoughtful and really strategic about how you grow or how you pivot or how you add on new services or change the business model or whatever the case might be. It's been interesting anyway. So I can totally relate to you in terms of the leanness of 2022.
Lance, can I play interviewer for one question?
Yeah, for sure.
So 2022, exceptional growth for revenue, profitability, your margins were lower. Had you been building towards and planned on your growth last year?
Um, so yes and no. So that's I can't say completely because we didn't know exactly what direction our growth was going to go, like, or sorry, how much of that growth. So
Mhm.
I was planning on X amount of growth, and we started to build towards that and build some infrastructure to achieve those growth on the sales and marketing side of our own business. And what ended up happening is that exceeded, and we had a hard
Mhm.
time putting the brakes on it and allowing us to grow in a little bit more methodical way. And so where
Mhm.
I got caught up was just on the just the growth. It's like, yeah, more, right? Like this is what every business wants. We all want to have these growing successful businesses, but success doesn't always mean, or growth doesn't always mean success. It can put too many strains on things. And so for us, where our biggest strain came from was on the systems. We got to a point where our systems started to break because our systems were worked well for a company of a certain size, and then once we got beyond that, then we started to see some cracks in those systems or breakage there. And
Mhm.
then we started to see some inefficiencies, and then that's where then the profitability really starts to take a hit. And so you start to try to plug the dam, so to speak, the leaks in the
Mhm.
dam with more people, and that's a cost. And so
Mhm.
those costly pieces, we needed to have then even more growth to take on those, and so then
Yep.
it becomes this vicious cycle, right?
Yeah, I think that companies, they sometimes find a healthy equilibrium.
Yeah.
and of the ratio of people to revenue, whatever metrics that you're guided by, and to grow a company by 30% or 50%, you have to make that investment. So the investment will have to lead beyond the expected revenue for a period, or the actual revenue for a period of time in order to hit that expected revenue. And I think that that can be it's difficult for an entrepreneur. You have to be ready for it because that profitability has maybe decreased or it looks a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and so for us, and this was the thing that as companies grow, so we grew from a 12-person company to like a 25-person company in the year, right? And so significant growth in terms of percentage, over 100%, but not significant in terms of like total headcount. When you talk about, some of these other companies that will be adding, 100 people or 200 people or whatever the case might be, right? The scales are different. But in terms of percentage, it was definitely a lot. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that, when I analyzed the growth or was planning the growth, I was looking at our cost for per unit of deliverable that we were delivering in terms of our marketing
Sure.
services, right? And what was missing in those calculations was the overhead, the extra management layer and stuff, which I was anticipating some of that, but not quite as much. And then, like I said, some of the inefficiencies. And so we just didn't have quite as much. Our ratio of HR cost to deliver each unit of product was growing faster
Mm-hmm.
than what I had anticipated. So yeah, so I was still doing the planning, I was still doing the estimating, just
Yeah.
my numbers
Yeah.
were a little off, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which happens, right? We always run into those situations, and so now the big focus has been for the last 6 months has been really about just trying to refine those systems and find the efficiencies and make sure that we can keep our costs under control. And so it kind of similar to where you're at, I
Mm-hmm.
think, in the way that you were talking, where it's like, okay, so we know what we're doing, we've done all this work, all this planning, all this strategy, all the development pieces. Now we have the foundation for growth. And now it's
Mm-hmm.
just a matter of let's turn it on coming into the new year, right?
Let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of, I'm curious, what do you think is going to, be the easy, like what's easier now that you've gone through that whole process, and gone through, the cycle of having Jobs Alberta and the things you learned there, and now that you've redone and invested all this work, what do you think is going to be easier now for you to achieve that growth than what it would have been back in the early days, say, of Jobs Alberta, even?
Yeah, I think that every day as an entrepreneur, there's an amazing learning opportunity. First of all, and you layer on all of this experience, and hopefully you remember it when you're presented with a material decision. I think that because we were 2022 was so devoted to refining what we do, really, and getting into some of the marketing terminology, demographic, psychographic, geographic information for our customer, like who are we selling to. And so we've been able to really better understand what we do, who we are, who our customer is, and then the processes and operations underpinning all of it. So because we were slower last year, it provided us with more opportunity to really build out a more resilient, a more thoughtful and
Yeah.
resilient system for our business. So that when we're, and these are best guesses in business, but we're trying to hit X number of business this year, X number of revenue. We believe that within our current system that we can do that, and we need to add new people here or over here once we hit these new thresholds. So again, it's you learn along the way, and these projections are probably off by a little bit or a lot, who knows? But we're at least prepared. We're prepared for the storm, and I say that very positively. The
Mm.
storm of our awareness of who we are and what we do grows, trust that we can deliver it, and then connecting with those people.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, if you could go back in time to your younger entrepreneurial self and write that young entrepreneur, young Jason, a letter, what would be in that letter?
I think that's a really great question. For me, it might be a little bit different, and I'll just share why. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur, I went the career route. I joined a large financial institution. I worked there for 12 years in a number of different positions, business units. And so I think that advice that I would give any young person is, you know, be very curious, be open-minded, look for trends, and really consider the things that make you happy, that you find fulfillment through, not what your friends are doing, not what people you follow on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram are doing, but really understand the types of things that you enjoy doing. And there is a type of entrepreneurial pursuit for a million different types of businesses serving different types of people. So I would say that don't get caught up with what other people are doing. Be really curious.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And the first time, so we've done 200 plus interviews now with entrepreneurs, and that's the first time that has ever been brought up. And I really, really like that one, Jason. Thank you very much for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure that our listeners did as well. If one of them wanted to connect with you, either to, have you do some work for them or just to connect and talk about entrepreneurship and your journey, is there a way that's best for them to do that?
Absolutely. You can reach me through LinkedIn. And so it's Jason Byrne, and the last name is spelled Byrne. And yeah, welcome any conversation. I love talking to people curious about business, entrepreneurs, and especially as Lance said, if you're looking for great tech talent, I'm here for you.
Yeah, completely. Well, thank you again. And for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this episode and want to check out the rest of our episodes, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find an archive of all of our past episodes. Or future episodes will be there as well, obviously. And when it comes to just the audio version, just search us up on your favorite podcasting platform by searching Amplify Your Business, and you should be able to find us there. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day. And thank you once again, Jason. Really appreciate it.